With the Craig Thomson appeal due to commence on Monday, I thought it was a good chance to get Craig back in and ask him where he thinks things are headed with his appeal. Welcome back, Craig. Thanks for your time once again.
Yeah, no, it's always good to talk to you, Peter, and I think this form of media is increasingly so important, so I think it's worth doing.
Yeah. In hindsight, with the way things have panned out, the sentence you were handed down the first time, if you'd actually accepted that and not gone for the appeal, it would have all been over and done with, and you'd have been home and everything would have been complete. In hindsight, do you regret not having taken that route?
Look, I thought long and hard about the appeal in the time that we've come up to today's date. Like previously when there were offers from the prosecution about settling the matter before the previous one, and at the end of the day, even though I have some fears about the outcomes, and I'm happy to talk to you about those later, I couldn't bring myself to go and say I did something that I didn't do. So if I get convicted, then at least I've maintained my position throughout this, and I'm not going to sort of take a different approach and run away and hide and avoid the fight. Though it has been the fight's more difficult, not so much in terms of those issues, though that's important. It's the difficult thing with fighting these issues is just the costs. And one thing that really opens up is I'm not quite sure how ordinary Australians get justice at all through our legal system with the enormous costs that are there.
Oh, it's hideous costs involved.
It's unbelievable, and the cost of running an appeal was a consideration as to what it does to not just my immediate family, but my daughter's futures, my parents who've helped, and all of those sorts of things. So yes, they were considerations, but at the end, to have to come and say I did something I didn't do, I couldn't end up doing that.
Couldn't live with yourself.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of costs, considering the costs involved in running the appeal, which I don't know if you've got a figure in your head on how much that actually has cost you, but in comparison to the charges that are against you, what is the total of the charges against you in money terms?
$24,000. And look, someone advised me many years ago, Craig, it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong, go and pay them, the union, some money and be done with it, and get it out of the way, and it'll be a lot cheaper and so forth. That may well have been good advice, but I'm kind of stubborn. If I think that I haven't done anything wrong, then I'll keep on sort of fighting for it. But it's enormous costs. We're hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars we've had to spend in terms of this, and particularly since the election last year, which obviously this matter cost me that election. It's also been very difficult to get work. So there's all of those associated
That's right.
issues.
There's also the cost on your family life and your personal health. Which I remember after you made the speech in Parliament, the parliamentary address, there was a lot of talk about your mental health. A lot of questions being raised because it was obviously a hard time for you. What impact has all this had on your mental health status? And have you sought help for any mental health issues that may have come up?
Look, I think people should treat mental health like any other illness that's there, and talk about it. I've had been under doctors' care and psychologists' care for many years, and medication in particular in the last year or so.
Was this brought about by what's come up, or was this before?
Yeah. Even well before the police charges and so forth, just the relentless nature of what was, to quote Anna Burke, I heard her the other day on the Australian Story, that she said, the then opposition played the man, not the issue. And that was their strategy in terms of that, and the strategy was to have me, regardless of whether they were right or wrong, leave Parliament. And so, yes, so there has been those sorts of issues. Now, having said that, I don't think having help in that way should stop you from defending your position when you're right. It just is an added burden as to how you deal with those sorts of things. You still need to turn up, put your case, argue your position, and deal with that illness as you deal with any other illness of a more physical nature.
Given that there's no new evidence and that there's no new witnesses to be brought in for this appeal, how do you think this is going to be any different from the last time around?
Well, quite frankly, my view and my legal team's view is they just got it wrong with the magistrate last time. What we've agreed, and partly it's to do with costs, because I quite frankly can't afford to pay a QC, a barrister and a solicitor for 20 days of a court hearing.
No.
But we're also happy that people have given evidence. Some of it we agree with, some of it we disagree with, but that's their evidence.
Yep.
What's important is what you draw from that evidence, which of those witnesses you can rely on. I would have thought that the ability for the prosecution to rely on anything that Kathy Jackson has said has probably markedly changed since my initial trial.
Well, you would hope so.
given the revelations.
Yeah.
So both parties can do that. So we are making it absolutely clear, and there was some misinterpretation of this before, that we're not agreeing to any of these facts at all. What we are saying is that there was evidence presented. We don't need that evidence to be presented again. What we will do is draw different conclusions from the prosecution in relation to that evidence, but we make it abundantly clear that we're absolutely not agreeing to these being the facts. They are the evidence that people have put forward.
Last time there was a lot of confusion last time around with what was considered admissions by many of those in the media, and whereas they were actually not, they were facts not in dispute. And I just got confused saying it. But yeah, I was just wondering what your perspective is, and if you can explain the difference between a non-disputed fact and an admission.
Well, a non-disputed fact might be that I had a credit card that's there. A non-disputed fact might be that someone has given evidence that I expended it in this way. And we will argue those particular points. I mean, a lot of the evidence is contradictory, as you would expect, so there are different facts to be drawn, or different inferences to be drawn from what's there. But given 5 years of a media circus, very limited resources in being able to fight this case, there's little utility in having all those people come forward who have given statements, put their evidence in, redo that just for the titillation of the mainstream media.
Yeah.
That stuff has been run probably 1,000 times on repeat. We have confident of our position from those facts that are there, and that's how we will run our case. But we are making it, because of the confusion last time, while I've got very good lawyers, they probably aren't great publicists, and the issue of admissions and evidence that's being admitted probably wasn't best explained, because my team thought they were talking to the magistrate, not necessarily to the Daily Telegraph and Channel 9.
There was a lot of confusion in that.
And so we've tried to make that a lot clearer this time. So the basic process, as we think is agreed, is that on Monday there will be submissions given by ourselves and the prosecution, and there will be some argument about that, but that's all. The evidence that's already there is in and can be dealt with. The judge undoubtedly will read through all of that, but we'll be basically making submissions, which is why we think the case will probably take 2 to 3 days, rather than 3 or 4 weeks at the minimum. So.
Thank God for that, eh? The other thing, Kathy Jackson, as you'd probably be aware, is there tends to be a lot of claims that she should get special treatment in the eyes of the law due to her perceived standing as a whistleblower. And I was just wondering, when you consider the way that that things have changed for Jackson, and do you consider yourself a whistleblower for actually highlighting the issues on Jackson in your parliamentary address? And if so, do you think you should get some sort of special
Well, I don't think anyone should get special treatment, and I get very annoyed when people do get special treatment, and I'd hope that in all things legal that are dealt with Miss Jackson, she is treated as anyone else would be treated, rather than specially. My speech to Parliament is something I stand by. If there is anything that's been there, I think the inaction from the current government in relation to investigating my speech, they were all going hard at the start, saying, I'm off to privileges and so forth. There hasn't been a whisper out of them since. If anything, the evidence that's come out from the Royal Commission and the federal court case involving the Health Services Union has showed that I may have understated the position in my speech rather than overstated it. I don't think I was anywhere near $1.4 million worth of spending.
No, I can't remember the figure you put on it actually.
Yeah, and I had little idea of the issues relating to Williamson at the time as well too, let alone the quantum of close to $5 million with him. So
it ended up being, I think it ended up being $1 million with Williamson, and interestingly enough, Jackson's is 1.4 as it stands at the moment. So
I think the numbers end up being pretty similar, and the modus operandi seem to be rather similar as well. That speech is something I stand by. I was defending myself, so I wouldn't characterise myself as a whistleblower particularly, but even if I was, you should be treated the same way before the law.
Well, speaking of special status and things before the law, on Friday, the Jackson solicitor, Philip Beasley, produced a document or produced his submissions to the Royal Commission. And in one section of it, and I'll read it to you, and I just want to get your thoughts on how you feel about this. Counsel Assisting initially foreshadowed a thematic approach to the hearings involving Miss Jackson. That initial plan, however, was not adhered to. I was just wondering what your ideas on that were.
Well, look, I don't want to be a commentator on this, but I would be worried, as I think most people would be worried, if there have been deals done before hearings as to how people are going to be treated, and if people are treated differently because of those deals rather than on the evidence that comes before the Royal Commission or any investigative body that's there. So that would be my concerns, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of other people, including yourself, Peter, who will be able to comment more in relation to what Miss Jackson's lawyers have said.
Cathy Jackson finds herself in a position with the mainstream media that you're obviously quite familiar with, haven't been there for 5 years or more. I was just wondering, considering her position in the media now and also her position in legally, you're almost finished your matter now, and I was just wondering if you've got any advice for Cathy.
Not really, but I in some senses, Cathy has enjoyed the favours of the media for a considerable period of time as well too, and so there are ups and downs with that. I'm not quite sure whether I've ever received the favours of the media in terms of it, and it's certainly something that I have great concerns about with this trial as well too, because a judge is obviously meant to be impartial and so forth, but no one is immune from the media coverage that has taken place over 5 years, and you are worried about the ability for a fair trial, even with a judge.
That's right.
That's there, as to how that will go, and so my legal team said we were going to win it in the first round, and we didn't.
Well, I can't think of a politician that's had probably as much negative media as yourself, certainly in recent years. And as you say, I can't see how that would not affect a trial.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I know judges are trained to put those things aside and so forth, but we're all part of one society here, and we're all read newspapers, see the news, and when it's been as constant and for as long as this has been, I have concerns, putting aside our arguments and the position that the lawyers have said.
All right. Well, thanks again for your time, and I wish you all the best next week. I hope everything pans out for you.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Always a pleasure.
No worries.